I've recently been reminded of this poem by Kipling. It's called The Beginnings, and I'll just read it to you. It was not part of their blood, it came to them very late, with long arrears to make good, when the English began to hate. They were not easily moved, they were icy willing to wait, till every count should be proved, ere the English began to hate. Their voices were even and low, their eyes were level and straight. There was neither sign nor show, when the English began to hate. It was not preached to the crowd, it was not taught by the state. No man spoke it aloud, when the English began to hate. It was not suddenly bred, it will not swiftly abate, though the chill years ahead, when time will count from the date that the English began to hate. This was written in 1917, and I think it says something about our current age. In general, I don't believe that the English are a hateful race. And in part, that is because of our Christian heritage, which tends to encourage forbearance rather than hate. Now, I'm not speaking about any other nation, any other race. I'm simply not interested. It simply doesn't matter what other people do in their own lands. It's none of their business. As far as I'm concerned, the only thing that counts is what we do in our land. So there does seem to be a lot of hate about, and yet what is this hate actually directed at? I should say that because we are basically, I've said in previous videos, it's, I'm not a churchgoer or anything. I don't really do that kind of thing. But I acknowledge that the Christian heritage and the Christian thinking which lies behind it. And Christian thinking intrinsically involves the idea that we are, in some aspect, divine or spiritual, however you care to put it. So I think it's much more the case that we hate what people do. We don't really hate them, because hating something which was either made by a creator or in some way is divine it conflicts. Most people, I think, would not wish either death or, say, some horrible disease like cancer on anyone else. In fact, we hear this said, that I wouldn't wish it on anybody because it jars with our underlying feeling. The other point of being Christian is that it requires us to make an effort in a certain direction, in the direction away from evil and degeneration towards more noble virtues. So when we see somebody else behaving in that way, we sort of feel an empathic shame. And I think this is part of it, that if it's all tied up with the empathy, that if we have a sufficient regard for ourselves, and if we regard ourselves to some extent as being spiritual beings, whether that be true or false, we naturally feel a kind of empathic shame for people who we see behaving in an entirely different way, in a shameful way. So we look at the leadership of our country, and a lot of people may have expressed a hate for certain figures, and I have to admit that I find some of them unbearable to watch and listen to. They absolutely disgust me. But do I actually hate them, or do I just hate what they do and what they have apparently become? Obviously, what happens in our own country affects us all. My basic premise is that we should put our own house in order. Now, some people watching may say, well, why don't you shut up and put your house in order? A part of our duty, I think, is not merely what we do, but it's also what we don't do. That if we see wrong being done, then it's up to us to speak up. We shouldn't just suffer in silence. And I think we've had too much of this suffering in silence. You've had the vociferous people there talking all kinds of nonsense really, and just really perhaps looking for sound bites or trying to stir up hatred in other people. And we have this so-called silent majority that seems to be keeping rather quiet. In my other videos, I've often opined on what people might do, starting with such small things as employing the golden rule, or getting out and actually talking to other people rather than spending their lives online. And I think this holds good. So, I don't want to go on too long, and I hope the wind didn't obliterate my reading of the poem. But I think we need to separate out the person from what they're doing. And I think that is simply part of our Christian heritage, that because we have this underlying sense of things, we are not that prone to actually hating. But yes, we can hate what people do, and we should strive to stop that kind of thing. But there is a difference, and we must make the distinction. Thank you.